Now I'm ready to add my illustration to the layout. Go to File, Place, find your illustration. It should be in EPS format, and you should store it in your project folder. And then just click to place. Okay, and you can go ahead and just click and drag to position it. This positions the image frame as well as the image. If you would like to just reposition the image inside of the image frame, then there's this kind of focal point area that you want to click and drag on. And if, let's say, you want to crop your image in some way outside of the text frame, then you would just drag that over. And you can see here's the text frame, but here's the actual image itself. So it's being cropped or cut off outside of that text frame. If you want to resize your text frame and maybe you want to crop your image that way, make sure that you are selected on the frame itself, and then you can click on and drag one of these nodes. So either from one of the sides or a corner. So you can resize the text frame without resizing the illustration. If you want to resize the illustration and the text frame together, then you want to hold Shift and Command and then drag, and you can make it either smaller or larger. And if you want to just move this around, you can click outside of this focal point area and just drag it around. So in order to position your images the way that you want, you're probably going to need to move them and resize them so that they fit. So one of the problems I'm having here is that my illustration has a white background, and it's sitting on top of my other elements that I've already placed and blocking them out. So what I would do is use the Send to Back command. So make sure that you have your text frame selected, the edge of your text frame. Right click with your mouse and choose Arrange and then Send to Back. And then it's behind. Okay, and then now that I see how it's positioned in relation to the other elements, I'm going to resize this a little bit more, shrink it down so that it fits better. Okay, and if you need to just nudge your image a little bit, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard. So if I want to nudge mine to the right, then I'm using the right arrow key. I'd like to place a copy of this image inside the text and have the text wrap around the image. For your menu, you probably will have more than one illustration, and you may want to do something similar. But again, it depends on your concept and your layout. So I'm just going to Command C and Shift Option Command V to paste in place. Click and drag to about the center of my columns. And I'm using the arrow keys just to nudge this into position, using that thin rule as a guide. Let's Shift Command Option to resize from a center point. I'll make this quite a bit smaller. It's a little too small. Okay, so now again I've got my copy of my illustration overlapping my text and blocking it out. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Arrange and Send to Back again. And I'm going to use the Ellipse Frame tool. Alright, so Ellipse Frame tool. I'm going to hold Shift and Option and drag from the central point. And I'm going to make my ellipse frame just a little bit bigger than my illustration. Now if you have an irregular shape, you could use the pen tool and create a closed path and it will have the same effect. Alright, so I have my ellipse frame. I'm going to go into the control menu and choose Wrap Around Object Shape. And that will cause the text to wrap around. Now, when you do that, you might have some problems with text bumping down and like I wouldn't want this price on its own separate line or this split like this. So you might need to do some adjusting. When your text wraps around an image, you want to make sure that it's not bumped right up against the image. You always want this little bit of margin or gutter in between. And you do have some options. If you go to the window menu and choose text wrap, you can increase that. So I'll just exaggerate this and increase my offset to 12 points, and you can see that it's quite a bit more. So you do have quite a bit of control over this. If you're having problems with the way your text is wrapping around your illustration, you do have some options. I'm going to just go ahead and click and drag a selection so that I hit both the ellipse and the illustration underneath it. And as I did that, I also selected my text frame. So I'm just going to hold Shift and then just click on that to deselect. Now I don't want to group these items together because if I do, it's going to bring all of them up to the top level of my layout and I'm going to end up blocking out my text. So all I want to do is with both of these selected and not grouped, I want to just hold the Shift key and click and drag along this vertical axis, and maybe I can just find a better position where it will be a little bit, it'll fit a little bit better. Shift Command Option to resize. Now this layout is starting to look pretty interesting. If you want to view it without all these guidelines, you can quickly do that by holding Shift W, and that shows you presentation mode. So you can see it's starting to look pretty nice. One thing that is a little bit off here is that the ruled line between our columns is now overlapping the pizza. So we need to adjust that. So I'm going to hit Escape to get out of presentation mode. And let's go back to our layout. In order to fix this thin rule, I need to go to the Direct Selection tool, click on a node, start dragging, and then hold the Shift key. So I adjust the length of this line. Then I'm going to Command C to copy, Shift Option Command V to paste in place. Click and drag the copy down, and I'm holding the Shift key, and then click and drag the node to shorten it. Hold Shift again to lock it into position. The layout's starting to look good. Next, I'll show you how to position your restaurant name in the upper third portion of your menu layout.